Welcome, everybody. Good evening and good Chodesh. May the merit of these special days and the holy days of Gimel Tammuz bring blessing to all of us materially and spiritually, Begashmias and Baruchnias. For those who don't know me, I'm Tzavia Groman. I have been blessed to have had many inspiring interactions with the Rebbe through correspondence over the years, and even to have had the privilege of a life-changing private yechidus with the Rebbe in 1981. On this, the 27th Yortzeit of the Rebbe, I would like to share some of these experiences with you so that you too may be inspired. When the Lipskes came to South Africa in 1972 as head shluchim, we had never heard of Chabad, Lubavitch, or the Rebbe. I came from a traditional family. My mother was born in South Africa, and my father came here as a 5-year-old child from Poland. My husband's family came from Lithuania and were more observant. Our good fortune was that we were exposed to the new shluchim early on, as my parents, who were running the largest kosher catering company in the city, had decided to purchase a hotel. While in the process of renovating what was to become a Mahadran Kosher Chalav Yisrael hotel with several floors of banqueting halls and a few restaurants, we were brought into almost daily contact with Rabbi Lipske, who would visit to monitor the hotel's progress with great excitement. We became good friends with the Lipskes and were frequent guests at their home and shul, where we learned so much, gradually becoming more observant. One of the first lessons they taught me was how to write to the Rebbe. My initial effort was laborious and felt forced, but once I received a beautiful reply from the Rebbe, I became a regular writer. I can tell you that I have 2 files filled with letters from the Rebbe in answer to questions and requests for brochas. In response to my second letter to the Rebbe said, "After not hearing from you for some time, I received your letter." I knew then that the Rebbe wanted to hear from me, and I kept writing and receiving wonderful answers and brochas. One letter I want to share with you was written on the 18th of Tammuz, on the 4th birthday of our daughter Orit. But I need to retrace my steps in order for it to make sense to you. After we were married in 1970, my husband and I went to live in Israel. We were not observant at the time. A little over a year later, on Erev Purim, I gave birth to a beautiful full-term baby boy. We were overjoyed, but our happiness quickly turned to grief when the doctors told us that the baby had a perforated intestine and would require dangerous surgery. On day 3 after his birth, he passed away, and we went home heartbroken. Several months later, there was a major outbreak of German measles in Tel Aviv. I was 6 weeks pregnant. Pregnant women all over the city were being tested to determine if they were infected with the virus and to decide whether or not an abortion should be performed. My blood tests were inconclusive. They were repeated and remained confusing. They indicated elevated antibody levels, which could have suggested a recent infection, or, if I had been inoculated as a child, could have suggested that my antibodies were rising to fight infection. Neither the doctors nor the laboratory scientists were willing to commit themselves to a decision in my case. We were shattered. Having already lost a baby, the fear of losing another was more than we could bear. My doctor was an Australian, Dr. Jacks, and for 5 weeks he consulted experts on my behalf. As we approached the 12-week mark of my pregnancy, when termination would have become dangerous, he called us in with my parents, who were also living in Israel at the time, and said, "I want you to be aware that what I am going to tell you is not based upon science, and I urge you to get other opinions. But if you were my wife or my daughter, I would not interfere with this pregnancy." We were so relieved. We listened to him, and as a result of his courageous advice, the pregnancy proceeded uninterrupted, and we never spoke of German measles again. Thank God our beautiful daughter Gilly was born in 1973, on time and perfectly healthy.
Years later, when Gilly was 6 and we had returned to South Africa, met the Lipskers and become more observant, I met up with a friend who had recently returned from Israel and known Dr. Jacks. She told me he was very ill. I was so upset. I remembered this doctor for his courage and faith and the confidence and joy he had given us. Although not a religious man, he saved me from doing something I would always have regretted. I sat down to write to the Rebbe for a bracha for his refuah. I told the Rebbe the whole story. It happened that my letter was written on the 18th of Tammuz. At the bottom of the letter, almost as a PS, I wrote, "Today is the 4th birthday of our daughter Orit, and I requested a bracha for her." I mailed the letter because that's what we used to do in 1979. Before Tisha B'Av, only 2 weeks later, I saw the Rebbe's distinctive blue A&L envelope amongst my mail. The letter was dated 24 Tammuz, and it read, "Blessings and greetings. This is to acknowledge receipt of your letter of the 18th of Tammuz, in which you mention also the birthday of your daughter Oret. No doubt you know about the customs that are observed in our circles in connection with a birthday, including the birthdays of young children who are yet too young to observe them themselves, and the parents do it for them." The message was not lost on us. We were overjoyed that the Rebbe had said our circles, seeming to include and welcome us into Chabad and making us a part of the Rebbe's circle. After that, we felt confident to identify ourselves as Lubavitch. The Rebbe put us in his circle, I said over and over in disbelief. His letter went on to say, "As requested, I will remember you and yours in prayer, and may God grant that you should have good news to report." He said that since my letter had been written and acknowledged during the period of the 3 weeks, he trusted that I knew of the significance of the period and what we could do to transform those days into days of gladness and festivity. But at no point did he mention Dr. Jacks. I was perplexed. A few days later, I met up with the friend who had told me about his illness, and she said she had received word that the doctor had passed away a few weeks earlier, before the Rebbe received my letter. Clearly, he knew. I want to tell you how the Rebbe gave me my name. I was named after my grandfather, and my English name was a sound alike. So our ketubah had Herschel married to Yaakov David. I did what I always did when I had a problem and wrote to the Rebbe. The Rebbe not only answered me, he answered me in his own handwriting, even putting in the nakudot to ensure that no one called me Tzvia, but rather Sivia. I felt very privileged, but I must confess it would not have been easy to re-educate people who knew me without the help of Rabbi Lipsker. Whenever he heard anyone call me by my English name, he would say, "Her name is Tzivia," and astonishingly, eventually, it stuck. In 1981, I won the Gorel to attend the Sheikh Chabad's annual convention in Crown Heights. Everything about that trip was beshert in a revealed way. To start with, Mashi Lipsker was the keynote speaker, so we could travel together, I could stay with her, and most importantly, she would prepare me for my yechidus. This would be my first opportunity to meet the Rebbe, and I was nervous and excited. I was expecting my 5th baby and had written many letters to the Rebbe about it, as some doctors had discouraged the pregnancy. Uncharacteristically, the Rebbe had not responded to my letters, but now I would have the opportunity to meet him and ask for his blessing. It was a time when the Rebbe was still seeing people in private yechidus, and I was the 52nd person to be admitted to his room at 10:15 that night. Mashi had helped to prepare me, and she was with me before I went in and waiting for me when I came out. I had spent the day davening, saying Tehillim, and writing my pun. Before I went into the Rebbe's room, his secretary, Rabbi Grona, warned me that I was not to speak to the Rebbe, but only to hand him my pidyon nefesh and to say nothing. From the moment I entered his room, I was struck by the Rebbe's presence. I put my pen down on the desk and another envelope containing the names of all the participants in the Gorel. I had labeled the envelopes and the Rebbe lifted each one and read the label. First, the Rebbe read through the names of each Gorel participant, following every line with his finger. And then he put the list aside, picked up my pen and read it. And only then did he look up at me, and his expression was one of gentleness and kindness, even a hint of a smile. I felt as though his intense blue eyes could see into my heart and soul, but there was nothing harsh in them, only comfort. He began to talk, and it became clear that he remembered every letter I had ever written to him since 1975, as he mentioned the content of each one in order from the oldest to the most recent. He told me that many of the problems I had written to him about had been resolved, and that others would also be. He gave me a beautiful brocha for the baby I was carrying, and many other brochas too. I tried so hard to remember them all, but it was like trying to catch rainfall. The blessings poured, and I struggled to hold on to them. It was a magical spiritual experience, and I was surrounded by holiness. Finally, the Rebbe asked me, "You didn't mention your mother-in-law. Is she well?" At that point, I knew I had to defy Rabbi Groner's instructions and speak. I had written to the Rebbe about my mother-in-law's poor health. She had Parkinson's, and about the passing of my father-in-law not long before. Finding my voice, I told the Rebbe that my mother-in-law was not well, and that I hadn't mentioned her in my pun because I didn't know her mother's Hebrew name. The Rebbe asked me, "Do you know her mother's English name?" I answered that I did not. And he said, "You will get it for me. It's not urgent, but you will get it for me." And then the Rebbe asked me when I was leaving New York. I told him. He gave me more brochas and instructions regarding a get-together I should arrange with the ladies of Neshei Chabad upon my return to tell them of my experiences. He told me, "I'm asking you to do this because I believe you can." The Rebbe gave me $33 and told me to use the money to arrange the get-together with the ladies. While I was speaking to the Rebbe, Rabbi Grona, who had heard my voice and must have thought I had initiated a conversation with the Rebbe, was banging on the door of the Rebbe's room and calling my name. I heard him asking Mashi if this was the way they taught people to behave in South Africa. Afterwards, I explained that the Rebbe had asked me questions and I had to answer. Mashi told me that his concern was to protect the Rebbe. Outside the office, Mashi waited for me with pen and paper, telling me to write down everything I remembered before I lost it. I tried, but I was so emotionally overwhelmed by the experience that I struggled to write through the tears. I called home as soon as I could to tell my husband about my experience and to ask him to get his mother's Hebrew name and the name of her mother, as the Rebbe had requested. The next day, I handed in the information at the Rebbe's office. But I also handed in something else, a question for the Rebbe which had been troubling me for some time. I told the Rebbe that I was feeling overwhelmed by the responsibilities of motherhood. No work could be more important, I said, but the job of mothering was too essential to be a part-time occupation. And yet, young women were encouraged to have large families while also working, running a home, entertaining, being involved in community events, learning, governing. I wanted to be the best mother I could be, but I felt inadequate and not up to the task because of all the many other demands made upon my time. I feared I was letting my children down, and I asked the Rebbe for his advice and guidance. Some days later, I was called to the office to receive the Rebbe's answer. His message was written in Hebrew under the heading Feelings of Inadequacy, and the translation is this: from time to time, you, feminine, should gather together to talk about the above. Each woman should strengthen her friend mutually, and God will help them. It was clear that the Rebbe was telling me about the importance of support groups for women. The Lipskers were excited about the responsibility the Rebbe had given me and gave it a name, AIM, from the Pasuk Aim Habonim Simecha, which in English was an acronym for Action in Motherhood. We ran it in various formats over the years, and because it has a generational relevance, I handed over the responsibility to younger women grappling with these issues. The Rebbe said that when two Jews meet and talk, there should always be a benefit for a third. How true this is of women. When we meet, we share, encourage, and support one another, and that, I believe, is what the Rebbe was telling me. Thank you for your time. May we always inspire and encourage each other. It is my privilege now to introduce a short video presentation focusing on the 12 Pesukim. While we are all familiar with these Pesukim, how many of us have ever stopped to think about the guidance they can give us in our daily lives? This will be followed by the keynote speaker for the evening, Miriam Lipsker. Many in our community will have fond memories of Miriam when she was a shlucha in Torah Academy Girls High School some 20 years ago. Miriam Lipsker is the co-founder and director of the Chabad Student Center at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. Hundreds of students participate in the vibrant community of Jewish life and learning that she leads. Known for her quick wit and down-to-earth style, Miriam is a dynamic teacher of Jewish thought and spirituality. She has been a source of inspiration and strength to communities around the world during the pandemic. Miriam and her husband are the proud parents of 8 children. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat box, and Miriam will address them at the end of her presentation.
Two years ago, I went to the aisle for my birthday. When I came home, there was a ping on my phone, and my cousin was texting me and said, "Is this you?" I opened up the video, and there I was, 6 or 7 years old, in 770, saying a pasuk in front of the Rebbe.
Towards the end of the summer, we were told that the Rebbe would be coming to 770 to greet us children when we were coming off the bus and to speak some words with us. It seems that somebody from camp notified my parents that I would be having the schus of saying this pasuk by the Rebbe. And when I got off the bus, my mother greeted me with a brand new Shabbos dress.
And I had to really buckle myself down and memorize that pasuk because I was going to be called up. But as resentful as I was that I couldn't be out playing, I was so excited. Here was the Rebbe, the main person in our lives, the everything to us, and it was little me, little Dina Chana, that was called up to say a pasuk.
Kol Yisrael will now be recited by a duet, 2 young ladies, Kayla Rothenberg and Dina Chaya Treason from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yay! Lahem!
In elementary school, our major school field trips were to the rallies that the Rebbe had made just for us kids. Here was the greatest tzaddik, the greatest sage of our time, a man who met with heads of state. He counseled world leaders, and yet he took the time, hours actually, to meet with and speak, to talk directly to us kids.
Als Rabbi Kiva sagt, dass das Klau Gott und Batero wird sicher einwillig nach Leriacho, Ingelach auf Ingelach und dem Mädelach auf Mädelach, als alle jüdische Kinder sollen wissen und sollen sich aufhören und sollen allein in Zivis Hashem.
When I was 7 years old, I said a pasuk in front of the Rebbe. I can't explain to you my emotion
my reaction when I was picked to say this pasuk. It was excitement in the whole home. All of a sudden, I'm standing in 770 in front of thousands of people, right near the Rebbe, and saying a pasuk.
Every time we stopped, my father would have us get out of the car and he would say, I bet this rock, this lake, this vista, this mountain is waiting just for us to say a pasuk here. I had words of Torah that I could use, something spiritual, something holy, some way to express that I wanted to speak to Hashem. But even if you did not have the 12 psukim since your childhood, it's not too late. I find myself only discovering the exquisite depth of the 12 psukim now as I get older.
When I was about 19 years old, that's when I first really started learning more about the Rebbe and about Chabad and the philosophy. And one of the things that I was introduced to was the 12 psukim. And I was told that the 12 psukim were handpicked by the Rebbe, 12 fundamental verses that we have that represent the core values and ideas within Judaism. So I appreciated that, and I could relate to it, knowing the different verses that were included. And of course, one of the main highlights for us was getting to watch the children from all over the world, one by one, being called up to chant the verses of 12 psukim and have everybody repeat after them.
Ki! Karai! Elecha! Hadavar! Levavcha! Lasaisai!
Not just that, at first it was like a cute thing and it was fun, but I remember taking note of the Rebbe as the Rebbe would watch these children shouting these psukim and with such excitement with their whole soul and their whole body.
Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek le'olam haba. Kol Yisrael, every Jew, chelek, has a place, le'olam haba, to make as their olam haba. Each of us has a personal space to create a world that is filled with light, that is filled with Hashem, that is filled with holiness, that is filled with love. How do we know what our space is to create olam haba? It's the space you find yourself in, the physical space of creating olam haba in this world.
Here was a boy swinging or trying to swing on the swing set there, and he was having difficulty. So he turned to his mother and he said to her, Mommy, I'm trying and I can't do it. It's too hard. Come, please, push me.
Yagaiti! Yalam! Matzasi! Al!
And she turned back to him and she said, Yagaiti umatzasi tamen. If you really try hard enough, for sure you're going to be able to succeed. I know you could try harder, and I know that you're going to get it. And so he did. He pushed himself and he tried really hard. And lo and behold, after a few minutes, there he was swinging away on the playset. And I remember being so inspired by that exchange, seeing that these 12 verses that I thought were, representing the core values that we have within Judaism as a, philosophical idea, were not just there to be just that, but rather they're here as a practical guideline. Practical, embedded, beautiful values that we can live with on a day-to-day basis, not just teaching to our children, but really for ourselves.
The pasuk that I was chosen to say, Yismach Yisrael,
Yismach! Yisrael!
that every Jew should be happy at being born a Jew and at being given a mission to make this world a dwelling place for Hashem. Joyfully. And when we're joyful, Hashem is joyful. I look back at this special schus, and I feel that this has given me also the kayach and the encouragement that I need, that regardless of what happens to me in life, I should accept it happily and always be joyful in life.
the Rebbe actually said that when the children are getting up at these rallies and they're saying the psukim, that there should be pictures of them and footage that bring it to life, to see how they are putting their whole body and soul into these psukim and that they live with them in such an all-encompassing way.
Gehen jeder in sein Abteilung in Zivis Hashem und Menatzeer sein in Milchemes Hashem und Menatzeer sein mit der Emes der Simcha und Bekore Mamosh gehen Mekabel sein Pnei Meshiach Tzidkenu und Besimcha und Betur Levo.
And that by doing that, it's going to enable children who, for whatever reason beyond their control, are not able to be at this children's rally, whether they be out in the four corners of the earth or even into the future, and they don't have the exposure yet that they should have of Jewish education, and that these photos and this footage will actually come to inspire them. They'll feel the life and the chayas of this experience through the footage. And I was so humbled when I heard that, to realize that I was one of those people, my family, my children, that the Rebbe was referring to. That, no, we weren't able to be at those rallies then, but he had us in mind, expressing that want for this to have footage, and that it's really coming true, that we definitely were affected by this footage, and that effect goes on until today.
Okay, so I want to say hello to everyone, but I only see Tivia's beautiful face, and I know Zoom gives everyone the opportunity to be checking in whatever condition they're in. But I really do want to encourage, if you have the courage to put your face on, it's so much nicer to talk to faces than to black boxes. And so I really can encourage you enough to please put on your screen. It makes it so much more enjoyable. And I just want to say, Tzivia, your words are so moving. You had such a zchus and honor to have those letters and yichidus and all the exchange that you had with the Rebbe. And I feel blessed that you shared that with all of us this evening. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for having me. Thank you. I see Pam and Sybil put on their screen, so I appreciate it. Mazel. Thank you. And it's interesting because I only saw the video yesterday that they put together, and I noticed that the girl saying the Pasuk Ki Karov at the Lag Bomer parade was myself when I was 11 years old. It was obviously a big zchus, and to be tonight gathered to discuss some of these ideas, I wanted to take everyone back a little bit. Where we know that on a Jewish perspective, every single moment in time, the moment itself has value in the air. There's an energy and an aura, no matter where we find ourselves on the Jewish calendar, whether it's counting down to Shabbos or 30 days before a holiday, or a different, each month has its own energy that we could tap into. And so right now we find ourselves between two key moments. We have and thank you those who are putting on their screens, Dina and Monica. It's so nice to see you. Thank you. So we're currently right in between Chaf Ches Sivan and Gimel Tammuz. And what's powerful about this time, for many reasons, I'm just going to point out one specific one, is Chaf Ches Sivan, which was yesterday or the day before in South Africa, marks 80 years since the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin came to America, to these shores. And obviously, what's so significant about that, everybody probably has their own mindset of what that holds to them. But for many years, I taught history. I actually taught Jewish history at the Torah Academy, which I have so many fond memories of. And I was always fascinated with history, what went on before we got here. And so the image that came to my mind that I wanted to kind of start with and share is this crazy story that took place in 1940. Everybody knows that the world was decimated, especially Europe. Hitler's blitzkrieg has literally brought rubble and ruins to so many vibrant countries. And at that time in 1940, 250,000 of the British troops were stranded on the beach at Dunkirk. And the problem was that it was really a race of who was going to get there first. Were the British going to be able to go save their soldiers, or would Hitler arrive first and obviously decimate the troops, and the tide of the war would change depending on who would arrive? The problem was that the British army did not have the boats and the equipment necessary to bring their soldiers off of this island where they were literally trapped and stuck. And so what happened? A crazy thing. Winston Churchill did something that no leader before in history had ever done. He put out a call to civilians, to every, Tom, Dick, and Harry, anybody out there, if you have a vessel that can make its way on water, whether it's a kayak, a boat, a merchant ship, a yacht, a little fishing boat, it doesn't matter. If you have it and you can get to the beach and put, whether you could fit 2 soldiers or 402 soldiers, whoever you can rescue, it's a life, it's one of our boys, it's one of our own, go and do it. He put out the call. I think in those days it was radio and telegraph. That's how people got their news. And the wild, crazy thing was that literally civilians got whatever vessels they had access to, went to this beach at Dunkirk, and managed to rescue 250,000 soldiers, who were then the people who went on to turn the tides of this war. And we know the end of what happened, thankfully. But really, truly, after this experience, Churchill announced this was a miracle of Dunkirk. What did he do? He empowered the citizens to take whatever vessels they had available to them, literally a kayak or a canoe or a yacht, and do what needed to be done. And this changed the really essentially the history, not just for the British people, but for everyone. And when I thought about this story, I thought it's such an analogy for what the Rebbe accomplished and continues to accomplish here, where you don't need to be a general and you don't need to be a captain of a ship. If you have a boat, if you have any vessel, the tides of assimilation and the tides of apathy and people not caring about who they are or what they're meant to be doing here in this world, the Rebbe came to these shores 80 years ago, and we know this idea that I think we probably discuss it most when we're in Parshas Noach, that Noah built an ark or a teva. What's a teva? It means the word. We go into the word of prayer, the word of Torah, the word of tefillah. But really, what did the Rebbe create? Every single one of us in our own life, in our own little sphere of influence is a foot soldier, turning back that tide of assimilation, turning back that apathy that we find in our own lives. And what did the Rebbe suggest that we do? Practically, I don't have a canoe or a ship or a yacht, and probably many of you don't either. So we're not talking about boats. What did the Rebbe empower us with? That any person, man, woman, or child, has the ability to take the words of Torah, the literal ships, the teva, the words of Torah, and to inspire ourselves and to use that to educate and to teach others in any capacity that we find ourselves interacting with others. And so what's interesting is in 1976, it was Shnas HaChinuch, the year of education, and the Rebbe was putting incredible emphasis on the power of education, which after a world decimated by the Holocaust and Jews running for survival undercover, education had gone, on the wayside in terms of survival being on the front burner, just make it to the next day. And what was fascinating is many times people think, okay, the Rebbe hand chose 12 passages, 12, fundamental core ideas to teach to the children to kind of start rebuilding and to building up an educated, knowledgeable Jewish community wherever they would find themselves. And really, that was not the Rebbe's purpose. The Rebbe's mission was not to teach the child the pasuk, so that the pasuk should be known by the child and the message, and maybe the child will live this way. And obviously, the Rebbe encouraged that the children should memorize and know these words by heart. But that was only the stated objective. The real goal was every one of these children should be a teacher. Every one of these children shouldn't just know this verse or this phrase or this idea, but not only know it and internalize it, but be a teacher, be somebody who's sharing that light with others. And so the idea of chinuch wasn't knowledge or information for the sake of knowledge and information. Rather, what the Rebbe was attempting, and so successful as we could see so many years later, was to give children, and when I say children, I'm obviously talking about the child within each and every one of us, adults. We also have a child within us, but that these fundamental ideas should be not just what we live with, but actually what we go upon, foundation setting for our world, that we are all educators to bring it out into the world around us. And so the program that we have this evening, really in an hour or so time, it's too much to get all 12 in. And so they were prepared, and I'm sure you're able to have either email to you or the PDFs of the fundamental Sikha, where the Rebbe laid out the second 6 of the 12 psukim. And what's really, really incredible, and I highly encourage everybody to do, is to either listen, watch, read, learn, whatever way you're most comfortable. These fundamental ideas, and they really flow one into the next. And I could just share on a personal level, I know in South Africa, so many of you grew up in traditional homes, and traditional homes means, you knew what Shabbos was, you had an idea of what kosher was, many South African Jews have a Jewish education, much more than Jews in America. And it was amazing for me to listen to Tivia talking about the impact that the Lipskers had coming to South Africa and kind of elevating the playing field and raising it up. And I think it's really a gift and a blessing. I actually just saw recently that I believe South Africa is one of the lowest percentages on planet Earth of intermarriage, which is fascinating. But I think it's because so many families in South Africa, it's a given that you're going to send your children to, a Jewish school of some sort, of some type. And the level of tradition in the community really has kept the community proud and strong in such a beautiful way. My own family actually comes from, I think in America, it's unusual to be a 5th or 6th generation American, where my great-great-great-grandparents came over more or less with Columbus, which doesn't really mean much for you in South Africa, but they had a lot of time to assimilate. And when American Jews assimilate, they do it pretty well and pretty solid and pretty strong, to the degree that they kind of still know they're Jewish, but nothing else about their life, their lifestyle, and their choices would identify them as a Jew. And it's very unfortunate, but the beautiful thing is that didn't deter the Rebbe. The Rebbe wasn't, going to be deterred by this very real fact. And so both of my parents grew up in profoundly secular homes. They were raised in families where they knew they were Jewish, and their brand, because today, at least in America, everyone wants to know, you Reform, conservative, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, rock-throwing Orthodox, like which Haredi, like what label could we slap on you, to put you into a lunchbox so we could figure you out. And my parents' family's label was, we're the leave us alone Jews. Like, we're not going and doing any of that. We're just doing the American dream thing, which they did very well. And that was really their that's how they grew up, until obviously, and this is the shift in the story, is that the Rebbe wasn't satisfied that a Jew should be living on this planet and not have an understanding and awareness of why Hashem put us here. And so if you look at the 12 psukim and you follow literally just one line after the next, it's a perfect structure of the basics. You're part of this people. Why are you part of this people? What does this opportunity and privilege give to you? Why did Hashem put you here? What should you do when you are feeling discouraged about this mission? How should you accomplish it? And you literally move on a foundation. It's interesting. I saw this, Shays Taub did a little construction project where he built magnetiles, which I'm guessing is a universal toy that everyone knows. Thank you to the three faces nodding. I appreciate it. So he built a little tower, just the most basic structure, squares on top of squares on top of squares. And he showed that if you try to lift this little structure up and you lift it from the top, it'll just separate. You can't lift it up. You have to start from the bottom. You have to lift the bottom set of squares, and then the whole structure could be lifted, even if it's very tall. And so literally that was the Rebbe's building block foundation of the 12 psukim. It's a structure. It literally starts out with the beginning, purpose. And I think with my parents, both on college campus, was when they started to ask those questions of, what does it mean that I'm Jewish? And what am I supposed to do about it? And is there something that I'm supposed to be doing about this? And the idea that this was literally, my parents were both college students in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And the shluchim who came to teach and to share were so on fire and so inspired by the Rebbe empowering every single person with these ideas, with these building blocks, that everyone can learn them, everybody can memorize them, everyone could live them. And they're so incredibly helpful to building a Jewish life, whether you have a traditional background or you're starting literally from the ground up. And so my parents' Yiddishkeit literally started from learning a verse, learning a pasuk, learning an idea, and then taking that concept and applying it into their own lives, literally one building or one level at a time. And I think today it's just a wild thing to think about that, two secular college students could grow on to build a family because of the Rebbe's vision that it's never too late and everyone matters and everyone counts and everyone has this job. And all you need to do is just, get out your canoe and see what you could do with it. And today, half of my 10 siblings run, meaning 5 of us run Chabad houses on campus, which in my mind is this crazy idea of the Rebbe arriving to America. And then you have such an incredible influx of Jews acknowledging not only I know I'm Jewish, but I'm a proud Jew, I'm a knowledgeable Jew, and I'm a Jew who can help another Jew learn an Aleph. I'm a Jew who can say, I know an Aleph. I maybe don't know a Beis, but I could teach another neighbor, friend, child, colleague, coworker, and Aleph. And this simple, basic idea literally has built up a people around the globe who are so much more proud and vibrant. I had a colleague on campus who did a lot of international travel in China and Asia for I think it's like, one of these Amazon sites that exports all the goodies that we buy. I think Amazon's a thing in South Africa, yes. So this friend of mine, she said she was in China and she was at a business conference. Obviously she was Jewish. Her name sounded Jewish. It was like a Sarah Cohen style name. And a Chinese entrepreneur came over to her and said, how many Jews are there in the world? So she said, listen, I don't know the exact number, but it's like we're less than 1% of the population of planet Earth, less than 1%. So he's like, I don't believe you. She's like, Google it, ask Siri, ask, Alexa, whoever you ask here in China. I'm not making it up. We're in America, we're closer to 2%, but in the world, we're less than 1% of the world population. And this Chinese entrepreneur is like, so how come you people are so noisy? How come we always hear about you and read about you and you're in the news and it's such a tiny people and you make such a ruckus, you make so much noise? Like, how crazy is this people? And she said she's not someone who would consider herself observant, but she came home and she's like, I was thinking about that the whole time. What is our noise? What are we, putting out into the world? What energy are we sending out there that everyone on planet Earth knows we exist, even though we're still tiny? We really pack a tremendous punch. And why is that? It's no shock because we have a mission to be God's light. And so what I wanted to do with the time we have left is really, the idea was to learn a sicha inside with all 6. The Rebbe shared 6 psukim in one sicha on Rosh Chodesh Iyar, and then on Lag BaOmer, the Rebbe shared the next 6 psukim. But literally, if you read both like sichas inside, it's a continuation. Like as we mentioned previously, we're continuing with the next 6 in this project, educate, inspire Jews to be educators, to inspire others. And so we don't have the time to go through the whole sicha, but I really recommend it. And they put it out there in English, in Hebrew, in Yiddish, in sound bites, in blurbs, audio, video. So whatever your learning style is, however you learn best, you could do it with a chavrusa. It's so fundamental, and it gives you such a boost of energy and power and passion in whatever it is that takes up your time on the daily. But I wanted to put up literally just one paragraph because I think it's so relevant, especially when I asked Liba, and I need to thank you, Mrs. Baumgarten, for organizing this, but I asked if this was like an in-person, zooming in the speaker, but the people are in person, because thank God where I am, things are greatly improved. And she said, absolutely not. Everyone's, kind of, I don't know if she said in lockdown, but very much at home, Zooming. And I thought that this one paragraph, Danny, if you could put up from the 3rd paragraph of Ice Zion. I see it in very, very tiny, but I think it's fine because I'm going to just read it very briefly and then go into it. So if it's up on the screen and you could see it, great. If you got the handout emailed, even better. If not, don't worry. There it is. Excellent. So I wanted to share this because I thought it's so relevant to what we've all been going through as a global community this year. And even though it's just the first of the second set of these 12 psukim, this idea that is so powerful from the age of 2 to 100, when we find ourselves in a challenging situation, we find ourselves in a difficult period, which I think everybody could agree on whatever level this year has thrown, chaos and curveballs to everybody. And what does the Rebbe say here? And I'm just going to read it very, very quickly straight through in the original Yiddish that the Rebbe spoke the Sicha in. And then I'll take out the main point that I thought was just incredible. So the Rebbe says here, "Was das hat a direkte Sheiches mit der täglichen Einführung," that this has a connection to our daily behavior. What has a connection to our daily behavior? The very first pasuk that the Rebbe chose from the Torah, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'haaretz. That's the context that this paragraph comes in. The Rebbe says this first opening verse of our Torah, our heritage, our blueprint, has a direct connection to our daily behavior. Varum a kleiner yingele, oder a kleiner mädele, oder afilu a erwachsene Mensch, a young boy or girl, or even a full-grown adult, whatever category you would put yourself in, kennen sich der Schrecken as midresent a große Welt arum sich. We can all understand that there's an enormous or tremendous or ginormous world around us. Und in der Welt seien da Sachen, was seien nicht, wie es bedarf zu sein. And in our world, we see things that aren't the way they should be. They're not okay. Things aren't good. If there's a global pandemic and people are getting sick and dying and locked up, this doesn't seem to be the way it should be, and we're not okay with this. Vider Lashon HaGemara, the way the Gemara describes such a world, is Olam Shamem, a desolate world, like a world in chaos, or a world that's just not the way it's supposed to be. A vista Welt. So the Rebbe translates the Gemara into Yiddish, a desolate world. Der pasuk as die Welt hab a balabayas. So this pasuk, this verse, Bereshis bara, comes to tell us 101, the most basic idea: this world has a balabas. This world has a creator. This world has an engineer and a designer. It's not random. It's not just chaos without any purpose, even though it may look that way from our vantage point and from our perspective. But the Rebbe continues, "Was hat ihr baschaffen," Hashem created this world, and das is der Eibishter. This is our creator. Und der Eibishter hat gegeben die Torah mit welchem wir können frieren der Welt. And Hashem gave us the Torah for which, or from which, we are meant to free this world. Und wir können durch der Eifen in es haaretz. On alle Sachen was seien da und auf der Erde. So we're here on planet Earth to elevate everything that is in the earth and of the earth, meaning all materialism, all physicality, all that Hashem places before us on planet Earth. We're here on this very intentional planet that Hashem designed. And what's our purpose here? To elevate everything on the Rebbe says es haaretz, and also es hashamayim poil zayin by dem Eibishter in Himmel. We should bring down from God up above. Erzal gebin bracha and atzlacha. Hashem should shower down upon us from the heavens, or from the proverbial heavens. Hashem should shower down upon us blessings, open and revealed blessings, so that we could see and appreciate that the work that we do, whether it's in our own homes, whether it's our businesses, whether it's our community building efforts and activities, we can see that the purpose that Hashem created in this world, we are partners with Hashem. We are partners with the Creator to make our world from a chaotic, nightmare of a landscape into a beautiful garden. And Danny, you could take away that screen of the verse. I'm not going to read the second one that we prepared because I'm keeping an eye on the time. But I wanted to this one pasuk, when one has stress and anxiety and fears just based on the chaos that's going on around us, it's a very normal thing to feel helpless and to feel, dejected. And what the Rebbe is telling us is the very first opening verse of the pasuk addresses this. There's a creator. There's a reason why this is happening, even if we, from our vantage point, can't see it. I usually describe this to my kids when they say, but why? Or I can't tell, or, the normal pushback that kids give us that we often have to, tell ourselves. And I show them, most of, the kids have socks with the polka dots or stripes or paisley, whatever the pattern is. And on the outside of the sock, it's this beautiful pattern. And it's very clear what, image is there. But if you turn the sock inside out, not all socks, but many of them, there's all these lines and threads going in like crazy different directions. And you can't really see on the inside what that beautiful pattern is on the outside. So I just tell my kids, look in the sock, and that's our image, meaning we see the world from the inside of the sock. Does that mean there's not a beautiful pattern, a perfectly structured order to things? No, but it's not our view. It's kind of like being behind the tapestry. You see the knots and strings, and in the front, you see the beautiful image. So the Rebbe is telling us, Bereshis bara, if we remind ourselves, there's a creator who put everything in place in perfection, even though to us, we see craziness and chaos. It's a reminder, I could take a breath. I could put down the burden I'm carrying on my shoulder, because it's not my task to finish the job. It's my task to get it started. And I saw today, I'm on Rabbi Masinter's WhatsApp thing. So daily I'm getting, I don't even know how to get off of it, but I'm getting reminders for events in South Africa. And I saw it popped up today. I could have showed you this. The event popped up and the book arrived from Amazon that I ordered. I haven't yet read it because it arrived today, but it's literally this point that why I ordered this book by Michal Ashman, who describes how for years she was this powerful executive, I believe working for, I don't know if it was Twitter or one of the big companies in tech or in social media. And she grew up proudly Jewish in Israel, but this idea that worry and fear and stress and anxiety can be lifted if I place the burden on the one who created all of this. I'm going to do my part. I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to show up. I'm going to learn what I need to share what I need to teach, but the rest is on you. And all of a sudden I feel lighter and I feel joyful and I feel happy, which is actually the paragraph that we were going to do together as well, the very last pasuk, that this brings us joy. If I know there's an order and there's a creator and there's a purpose and there's a mission, and when I fall down, I could get back up, and every one of us is here to do that. That brings me incredible joy and incredible comfort. I don't know if any of you have ever been in the airport in Atlanta. It's not the largest airport. It has the most travelers coming through from any airport in the world. Over 100 million people come through Atlanta. I have no idea why, but there's a ginormous escalator from the plane train where all the different flights and terminals arrive to get up to, to get out of the airport. A very, very, very large escalator. And there's like 7 of them in a row. And everybody who's going anywhere has to get on these escalators. I was with my kids a couple weeks ago. We were getting on the escalator. It's fun. It's like the big escalator. And there was a fellow right in front of us. He looked like he had just backpacked. I know you're looking at me like, who's traveling? Apparently it's a thing. All the stores and shops are out of luggage, and any suitcases that you cannot find because people are going. I have a daughter leaving to seminary in Israel, and on the mom's chat, I was like, where are you finding luggage? There's no suitcases. I'm like, you didn't have luggage last year? Like, why is everyone needing to buy new luggage? Maybe you need fresh one. But anyway, I'm with my children. We're behind this fellow. He had a ginormous backpack, one of those like trek across Europe with the kitchen sink in it. And it literally was like, it was 6 feet. It was the size of this man from his ankle to his head on his back. And he was like making these grunting sounds because he was holding this very heavy piece. And one of my kids was very insightful. And she's like, Ma, do you want to tell him that if he puts the bag on the step of the escalator will carry it for him. Then he'll have to pick it up when he gets to the top. But while we're on this escalator, it's only a couple minutes. But like while he's going up, he could just place it down and it will carry it for him. So I told my daughter, I think at this point, till he gets it on and off, but it was such a simple observation, but really in our lives, we are all on the escalator and we're all carrying these ginormous packages with our mishigasin and our history and our burdens and our rosebuds and our, you name it. Everyone's got their stuff and it's heavy and it weighs us down, but Hashem could carry it for us. The same Eibishter that's lifting us up one step at a time can carry our burden, can carry our baggages also. Put it next to you. You'll keep an eye on it. Don't let it get too far. Make sure it's right nearby, but Hashem could carry it for you. And a lot of what the foundation of the psukim teach us are these fundamental principles. Hashem created a world. There's a rhyme and reason. You have a purpose. You have a place. I'm saying the psukim in English. I'm not reading the verses, but I'm not just saying words. Those are the order of the psukim if you read them inside. And when things get rough, don't give up. If you try, you'll succeed. And what's the ultimate mission? Yismach Yisrael. We should be joyful and happy because we know I didn't come here because I wanted to be born and I wanted to be a human on planet Earth. Hashem wanted me here. Hashem put me here. And that's the only reason why I'm here. And guess what? Hashem put me here with this family, this situation, these finances, these capabilities and handicaps. I got it, all the package that exactly was custom tailored for me. And my job is to wake up every day and do the work. But I wanted to conclude with a story that occurred with my husband. I mentioned very briefly about my own family background, how the Rebbe's vision really is the reason why my family today is an active part of the Jewish revival of our people. But my husband's family, in contrast, were the Lipsker family for hundreds of years. It's like, I would say, since Avram Avinu, they were connected, plugged in Jews, starting, and especially in terms of from the Lubavitch community. My husband's grandmother would make food for the Rebbe in Paris. That was the only person who the Rebbe would trust, to prepare the food, etc. So we're talking a very different style family in terms of commitment to Yiddishkeit. And this story, my aunt shared with me recently that Mrs. Tzivia Jacobson, who was a Lipsker before she got married. So she's my father-in-law's sister, my aunt. So she shared this story that I had heard many times, but I thought it was just very appropriate leading into Gimel Tammuz coming up Shabbos Sunday. And what she said is that their family was in Russia. And at that point, they had 5 children in the family. Many more children would be born later. But in 1929, the Frierdiker Rebbe left Russia for American shores. And from that point on, she said she was a very little girl, but her mother, which is my grandmother, my daughter's named after her. She's Teibel Lipsker or Luba Alta Teibel. If you ever meet someone with that name, it's named after this incredible woman. She would put her children to bed every night. And when she would say Shema with them, she would close out her, parting good night message was, wir sollen sich sehen mit den Rebbe. We should see the Rebbe again, which was the most far-fetched, ain't gonna happen. We're in Russia. There's no way to get out of here. We're really, really trapped. Like it wasn't an iron curtain then. It was like an iron cinder block, wall. There's no getting out of here. So how are we gonna go and see the Rebbe? But that is how she would put her children to bed every night. They would say Shema, and then she would give them a kiss, and she would say, we should reunite with our Rebbe. We should see our Rebbe again. And In 1946, the family actually managed to get out of Russia. They came to America, and Sivia says that literally they came from the airport, they put on their Shabbos clothes, and their first stop was to go have a Yechidus with the Frierdiker Rebbe. So we're talking 1946. So here's this family. I believe they had 5 or 6 children at that time, with their parents coming out of Russia. They came into the Frierdiker Rebbe's office for Yechidus, which I'm reflecting from Sivia's own experience with Yechidus, with that like overwhelming feeling of awe. And when they came into the room, they all said together, Shehechiyanu v'kimanu v'higiyanu, that we're seeing our Rebbe again. And as they finished this bracha, the Frierdiker Rebbe, she said he didn't stand up because he wasn't able to stand properly, but he raised himself up from his seat, so he was like standing, and he said, seeing a family like this coming out of Russia, I should be the one to say Shehechiyanu. And so I want to conclude that we should all be able to say Shehechiyanu together. Not only that we're seeing our Rebbe again, but the whole world is united under the leadership of the creator of heaven and earth, that we should see the goodness, we should feel the revealed brachas, we should see the light in our world, that the Rebbe encouraged us to learn and to build and to teach, but it shouldn't just be something that's an effort and I have to, get up and toil and fight with the darkness, but rather Mashiach's coming means that I'm going to still have work to do, but I'm going to be working in the light, on the light. People are like, oh, when Mashiach comes, what, you guys are just going to close your Chabad house and go, pina colada on the hammock? Like, what's going to happen? I'm like, are you kidding? There's going to be people lined up around the street corner wanting to know, what do you mean, creator, heaven? There, people are going to be yearning and thirsting to learn and to understand and to know. So instead of, fixing broken things in the dark, we're going to be fixing lit up things in the light. But we have a lot of work cut out for us. So it's good we got a year to kind of simmer down at home, get our energy, take care of all those home projects that you never were able to do. But just know you got to get that revitalized boost, because it's happening and Mashiach's going to come, and all of us together will be on the front line saying, you know what? Torah Tziva, that Torah that we all got on Mount Sinai, it's so much more relevant today because we're bringing it to the entire world, one light at a time, one Jew at a time, one non-Jew at a time, because Hashem's entire world is going to be filled with light for everyone. And may it be speedily now. We could say Shehechiyanu together and welcome in a new day with new light and new clarity and a revelation of blessing for everyone. So L'chaim, for me, it's not really time for I know they say it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but it's like 3 p.m. So I'm going to just, keep it light here. But l'chaim to each and every one of us, that we should be able to do the work that we need, starting inside with ourselves, to strengthen ourselves and to find that passion and light within us. And then inevitably it will shine out and it will emulate, it'll reverberate and it'll circulate to all of those around us. And we should be blessed that before Gimel Tammuz, we can say Shehechiyanu and welcome Mashiach. So thank you and l'chaim to everyone. And it's been a pleasure. And I thank you to the half a dozen super brave women who came on. Let me talk to a human face. It's one of the 12 psukim, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, right? I thank you. I really appreciate it. As Monica and Dina and Beryl and Esther and Chaya and Nina, Sybil and Sivya. Okay, so I know Sivya mentioned if there were any questions or comments or alternate speeches, you can put them in the chat box. The only thing that I'm seeing in the chat box is that there's a app or some community chat where you could get the sicha. So go check that out. And if you're in lockdown or if you're at home, make this a priority to learn and to revisit. It's such a beautiful sicha. With every paragraph is a nugget of like spark and beauty in terms of foundational Jewish wisdom. So I can't encourage you enough to do that. And if you travel and come to Atlanta, I would love to see you. We always say we leave the door open for everyone because our Chabad house is currently a ginormous tent that does not have a door. It just has a flap. So I know in South Africa, you guys have big gates and gates for the gates and barbed wire for the gates, but we just have a flap of a tent, and you're all welcome to join if you ever find yourself in my neck of the woods. So thank you. I'm not seeing any questions unless, there is one. And
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you for such an inspirational evening, and to all the Chum Hiskashrus in the USA for the magnificent video and behind the scenes work that they put into this and the other programs throughout the year. Thank you to the organizing committee at this end, and a special thank you to Danny Kadar for rescuing us on the tech side tonight. May the success of this evening be seen in the practical lessons that we have each learned and will implement in our own lives going forward. Miriam, you are inspirational to listen to. Thank you so, so much.
thank you and good evening. And thank you, Tivia, so much. I was really inspired by what you shared so beautifully.
Thank you.
Toma lecho nafshi, toma lecho besori, be'eretz Tzio ve'yo yebni moyi. Came back on the Shchazi Sichali Rois Uschoch Voidecho. Came back on the Shchazi Sichali Rois Uschoch Voidecho.